Hi, everyone. I am Amy Zelmer, and you are watching TBI TV, brought to you by Integrated Brain Centers. In today's episode, I'm going to be chatting with Dr. Shane Steadman from Integrated Brain Centers, and I'm so excited for you guys to hear all about what he has to tell you about functional neurology and how it can help with your symptoms. And he is going to share all about the treatments and technologies that they utilize at their clinic during a week-long intensive. And he's also going to clarify the difference between what is a functional neurologist and a traditional neurologist. So I hope that you guys stick around because we have a lot of amazing content to cover with you guys today. All right. Okay. Welcome, everyone. I am Amy Zelmer, your admin of Amy's TBI Tribe, and I'm here today with Shane Steadman. He is the owner of Integrated Brain Centers in Denver, Colorado, and he is my new partner in the functional neurology world. So I'm really excited to have him here today, and he's going to share a little bit about who he is, what his clinic does, what they treat, what kind of cases they deal with in their clinic, and answer any questions that you guys might have. So if you have any questions, pop them below in the comments and we'll try to get to those. So Shane, let's start with just introducing who you are. You are a chiropractor with the Functional Neurology Diplomate through the Carrick Institute. And so how long have you been doing this and working with TBI patients?
So I've been doing this for a long time. Actually, to even start back a little bit, my mom worked for a chiropractic neurologist when I was in high school. So I got exposed to this. Oh my gosh, I graduated high school in 95. So probably like early 90s. It's kind of when I got exposed to this. And then I went to school to be a chiropractic neurologist, and I've been doing it for 17 years. So that was the whole passion I had, was kind of coming out and helping people. You hear a lot of stories of people like, oh, I had a concussion, and so I got into this field. Even in orthopedics, people are like, oh, I had a shoulder that was, blown my shoulder out, and I went into orthopedics or pediatrics or whatever the case is. And actually, I went into this not because of anything I experienced that I went through personally, but more of trying to help out people. And I remember my mom would come home with like the coolest stories, and I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to do what that guy did, because they had some really cool stories. And so he was a doc back in the day. He's actually still in practice. So we talk more as colleagues, where back in the day, I remember he was like the first chiropractor I ever had. But we talk now as colleagues. But he did a lot of the functional medicine and functional neurology, and he kind of blended those two worlds together. So when I went to school, I was like trying to figure out both the functional medicine side and the neurology, so I can blend those worlds together. And so yeah, just been doing this for 17 years and helping people out. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And things change every year. They get a little bit different.
And I look back, so I've been on my journey for 6 years, and even just in the 6 years I've been in the brain injury world, things have changed so much, and awareness is growing. And was it just last year, I think they changed the protocols for children? Like, you used to be told to rest in a dark room for like days on end. And now they're like, no, don't do that. Get back to some activity. So, we're learning more and more every year. And, I'm so passionate about functional neurology, but it took me 2.5 years to find it. And once I did, it validated everything that had been going on. I kept telling doctor after doctor after doctor, there's something wrong with my eyes, like something's not right. And I think the reason I was so diligent is because I was a photographer. So I use my eyes for my job, right? It's not like I just use my eyes to see everyday things, but like I fine-tune see with my eyes through my camera lens, and I knew something wasn't right. And so it was very validating to get some answers finally through functional neurology. And so I think one thing I would love for you to share is like, what is functional neurology? What makes it different from just traditional neurology, which is what most people are familiar with?
Absolutely. In the traditional neurology, one of the things I've grown to understand, there's a time and a place for everything,
Right.
and I think in the medical neurology sense, they're definitely trained more on looking at pathology, so if, like I have across the street, literally, I have Craig Hospital, which is one of the more, world-renowned brain injury hospitals right across the street. And, so people that go in there, they see extreme cases. And even at Craig Hospital, they even see such extreme cases now that they kind of pick and choose their cases. So we actually get some of the overflow where people go, I wasn't bad enough to go to Craig Hospital. And
Right.
I've been on panels with those guys too. And I say that because they see people who, are in a coma, who have had brain bleeds, who have had cracked skulls. We were working on a case last year that was at Craig Hospital where he had a brain infection, and they actually removed his skull off his head, like half his skull, for like 180 days, and then they put a plastic one on there. And then we had another patient we're working on, Craig, where she actually had an issue with her frontal lobe, and they actually built a brand new frontal lobe, out of the that 3D model. So they actually built a brand new frontal lobe, and that's the stuff they,
Isn't
there's
that
some
amazing?
amazing stuff that's out there. And so you kind of see that world is in that kind of paradigm of like pathology, diseases, acute injuries, repair, and all those pieces. It's interesting that when you look at the difference between like what I've seen over the years with Craig Hospital and what we do is there's a lot of people that will be done with Craig Hospital and then they come into our office because they need their function back. They're like, okay, I'm no longer going to die. I can now use my arm. I can now walk again, but now my eyes don't work. My balance isn't perfect. I still struggle with memory recall. I still struggle with, all these different pieces like sleep and energy and reading, and they don't necessarily deal in that kind of stuff. They're like, we got to get you back to living again. And I think where the functional neurology comes in is saying, okay, how do we restore function, and how much of that function can we get back? Because it's not always 100%, but if we can get from like 60% to 85% or 90%, that's stinking awesome, and I think that's the functional neurology. And that's kind of why you see that terminology of functional neurology there was definitely a group of the chiropractic neurologists that were trying to explain to patients, what do we do? And that's what we try to do, is we try to restore function so that you can live again.
Yeah.
Things that you love. And so that's kind of where the functional neurology term came about.
Yeah. And I hear all the time from people who, they're eventually sent home from the hospital and their spouse or their parent or their family member will be like, well, now what? Now what do we do? And they're like, bye, like he's alive, good luck. And the person still is like struggling with vision and balance and, all those other things, or maybe they do get sent to an outpatient program, but still they're struggling at the end of it. And so that's why it's so important to know that providers like you exist. I had no idea, I just stumbled upon it, and I'm so glad that I did. And Teresa Byrne just said, I worked with Dr. Steadman after a hot mess of a TBI. Functional means all around, not just one area of healing. And I thought that was an interesting way of phrasing it too. Like you're looking at the entire system. Like if you go to vision therapy, they're just working on your eyes. If you go to PT, they might just be working on your balance or your gait. But you guys look at everything, the entire system, because your brain runs everything, right?
Yeah, it was interesting because I think a lot of the chiropractic neurologists, years ago, kind of utilized that phrase functional neurology because of the term functional medicine. And so in functional medicine, it is a holistic approach. So we're trying to say, well, there is that holistic aspect of neurology too, that I think if you hyper focus on one area of the brain, you can do really well. But as many people know that have a brain injury, it's so integrated and so complex that you can't just work on one area and expect everything else just to magically improve. Like you can do vestibular therapy, and it's amazing what you can see from vestibular therapy, but that doesn't mean that it's going to automatically fix your frontal lobe and automatically fix your left ankle. There's so many pieces. And I think even that's one of the things that we've done in the functional in our office that's kind of made us unique, is we actually look at that functional medicine piece as well. So you can have somebody that, has you can have a brain injury that led to like an autoimmune condition. You can have somebody that was anemic, and then had a brain injury, and it was way worse because they didn't have enough fuel to recover from the anemia. You see certain people that have blood sugar issues that struggle to recover. So you can have therapy after therapy after therapy after therapy, but if you're anemic and you're hypoglycemic, low blood sugar, man, it's going to take you forever to get better. So those are the pieces that we try to bring to the table. Is like, if we can provide fuel and oxygen and rehab and combine those worlds, I mean, that's kind of the functional neurology holistic approach to brain injuries.
Yeah. And, the whole blood, the lab work part of it, like your general practitioner may have ordered blood work, but they're not looking at all the markers that you guys are looking at. Like, my printout from my blood work was like 3 pages long, at least. Like, it was crazy. So you guys are looking at so much more than just like general cholesterol or thyroid's a big thing, especially with women after brain injury. The thyroid can really get off. So you guys are looking at a broader spectrum in that lab work, because if there's that underlying metabolic thing going on, no treatment is going to get you better until you address the metabolic issue.
It's interesting because I think you had, the brain, kind of research, and you had like body research, and now you're seeing the blend. So you're seeing a lot of like, they call like brain gut axis, brain body axis, and now there's like a lot of research that states that, if you have a TBI, that can lead to ulcers in the stomach. If you have a TBI, that can lead to thyroid dysfunction. If you have a TBI, that can lead to, all these other stuff. And this is fascinating because that's what a lot of patients say, is that like, ever since my brain injury, these things have been off too. But if you go to your MD neurologist, or if you go to traditional neurology, they go, well, that's not my department. You need to go see an endocrinologist. Yeah. You got to go see a gastroenterologist. And you got to see an immunologist. And before you know it, you're seeing like 10 different specialists, 10 different rehab specialists. You got a PT, OT, speech, and you're like, oh my gosh, I think my life is filled up with doctor visits. And so that's one of the things.
And none of them are talking to each other.
Nope. And that's what we try to do, is can we combine these worlds in here so that we know where everybody, like, what's going on with your gut, what's going on with your brain, what's going on with your stress, what's going on with mental health, what's going on with all these pieces to get you better as fast as we can.
Yeah. So, Pauline said that she had burr hole surgery 6 years ago and still has many functional issues, especially with her eyes. And I think the eye stuff, I see it, eye and dizzy are like the things, and I guess headaches would be, if I gave a top 3, those headaches, dizzy, and eyes are the 3 things I see come up over and over and over in this group. And those are definitely things that you guys understand and know how to help combat.
I would agree with you. I think the eyes and the dizziness are absolutely top. It's even funny, sometimes people go, I think I might have had a brain injury or a concussion. Like, what do you think? And they go, well, my eyes are kind of off. I'm dizzy. I'm sensitive to light, sensitive to sound. I get headaches. I'm like, oh, sounds like everybody else in this office.
Yeah.
But yeah, the eyes are important. Sorry to interrupt, but the eyes are important. I totally agree. And I think some of the things that we're also working on in the clinic is we have Dr. Terry Trinka, who deals with like the vision and prisms and looking at like eyes. Cause like, are your eyes a problem, or is it the brain causing the eyes to be a problem? So we even have doctors in here where we can tease that out and say, is this a vision issue or is this a brain issue? Cause you don't even know most of the time, because after a head injury, who knows what happened?
Yeah. And the research has shown it's something like 90% of people with a brain injury will have eye tracking problems. And that's exactly what was going on with me. And once we got that figured out, I mean, for me, it was pretty immediate. It was after like 3 treatments. And I know not everybody responds that quickly, but for me, it was like, whoa, I can see like everything was just like sharp again. I can't explain it. And that helps settle down a lot of the other issues. Like, it helped the balance and the dizzy and everything else settle down. So what are some of the treatments that you guys do in your clinic? What are some of the technologies you use, and what does like a typical intensive look like at your clinic?
A typical intensive is somebody comes in, usually on Monday. Monday is just a lot of evaluations. Our exams are pretty extensive. I think that's one of the things, in a weird way, I've kind of pride myself on, is having these really comprehensive exams. Because you want to do stuff comprehensive at the beginning, so you're not going like, oh, I should have checked that. Oh yeah, if we
Right.
would have seen that, that would have probably, like that drives me crazy. And so we spend a lot of time doing histories, mental health assessments. We do brain assessments, visual assessments, vestibular assessments, motor, sensory, autonomics, looking at POTS, dysautonomia. So we're like, and the history is intensive too. So I mean, there's a lot of times that, it's about 3.5 hours of just checking somebody out. And then usually that day we're like, okay, here's what's wrong with you. Here's the systems that are not working. And then we'll actually start diving into some therapies, that day. Cause we got to say, okay, is what I'm thinking actually going to work, and you find out really fast, if you do something and all of a sudden you're like, hey, this is better, and this is better, and this is better, then that you're on the right track. And if you do something and somebody crashes, you're like, okay, maybe you're a little bit more fragile than we thought. And so that first day becomes like this assessment, therapy, evaluation, just really all eyes on you. And then, the rest of the week is really kind of getting into the nitty gritty of everybody's individualized issues. And so we can do vestibular therapy. I think we're really, really good at that piece of it. Dr. Maynard is phenomenal, so he's kind of geeks out on that area, which I love. So I know when you talk to him, he'll probably geek out on that.
Yeah. He'll be on here tomorrow.
Yeah. So he loves the vestibular and dysautonomia piece, like nobody I've seen. So, we're really good at the vestibular. We're really good at the visual piece and eye tracking. We have what's called NSI, neurosensory integrators, where we can do things with like coordination and balance at the same time, coordination and eye movement balance. We can do things with like perception and visual fields, a lot of things with the head and neck. We have electrical stimulation units for nerves. We have ultrasounds, cold lasers, PT, tape, exercises, therapy bands. We got a whole, 2,000 square foot rehab facility on top of our, our office spaces that we have. And then we have hyperbaric. So we can do hyperbaric in the oxygen at the end of the day, which is sometimes really nice to like work people out and then go sit in the hyperbaric and just get flooded with oxygen and just kind of heal from the day. So it's a full day. It's a lot of fun, but we have a ton of different technologies that we can utilize.
Mm-hmm. And so your week-long intensive is going to be 5 days. The first day starts with the exam and some treatment. And then the other 4 days, you're pretty much doing treatment all day, right?
Yep. All day long. So there's usually at least 4 sessions of working with people. So usually one of the docs, we tend to be one-on-one with a doc, and then we have a, therapy assistant. So you meet Kate right now. With COVID, we've had turnovers and people and stuff like that, but right now Kate's with us. So, if you're in the office, in the next coming months, you'll meet Kate and one of us. So she'll like help, because if we have to do some like gaze stability exercises, we'll have Kate help in doing some of those things like that. But all the doctors and all of us are constantly evaluating and working with you all day long. So usually it's kind of like you work, give you guys a break, work some more, break, work, break, lunch, come back, work, break, work, and then maybe hyperbaric at the end. Mm-hmm. So we tell people, bring your lunch. We have a refrigerator, we have cabinets, we have, just, you can eat in the office, you can eat outside, just, you're going to live here for about 5 days and get well. Cause that's your only job, is to come here and get better. Yeah. So you have to get an Airbnb or stay somebody. You're just basically getting a place to go sleep. That's it.
So, the one thing that comes up a lot is people are fearful that it's going to be too much for them. They're not going to be able to handle an entire day. And I get where that comes from, because I thought the same thing. I'm like, oh my God, I can't stay awake all day. How am I going to do this? But how do you deal with overcoming that with your patients?
Definitely, you have to watch every single person, that is for sure. And there's some people that what we find is they can only handle a little bit. So we might do the same, like maybe volume of therapies, but it's broken up into small chunks, with a lot of breaks and rest in between. And then there's certain times that we might even adjust the schedule and say, what, let's have you do some stuff in the morning, and then just the rest of the day be done. So we start early in the morning, which works out for some of these patients. But you can tailor it, because if people are, sometimes their anxiety kicks up, when you're doing some therapies, you're like, Oh, okay, that's good to know. Well, we also know how to calm back down. And also if somebody starts fatiguing, we also know what to do to kind of get them back up and running. Or is your fuel source off? So let's do some things to increase your fuel so that you can maintain the day. And the goal is not to push people so that they're crashing and hurting and worse off. So you're constantly like pre and post testing all of the time, so you find certain, what they call biomarkers or tests, and you go, okay, like this is a test, right? So last week I was working on a patient and she could do this. And then I did a couple things and she started slowing down. I was like, oh no, okay, that didn't work so well. So then we redid some stuff and then she can do that again. So I'm like, okay, those are biomarkers that you can test, retest all day long. And you make adjustments from day 1 to day 2 and from day 2 to day 3. You're constantly making adjustments. And I think that's the beauty. If you just do a protocol-based system with patients, it's just not going to work because you're shoving everybody into your system instead of adapting your system to that person.
Yeah. Each patient has an individualized plan. And do you also find by like the 4th day, like Thursday, like most people are starting to like, oh, I'm feeling better. Like you have that noticeable improvement. The first couple of days might feel like a struggle, but then I feel like by day 3, day 4, you start seeing improvements. And once you start seeing those gains, it's exciting and you realize, okay, I can work for this. I can get better.
Absolutely. Yeah. Even us too, it's like day 1, like even on day 1, we're tired, and then day 2, you're working on people and you're like, come on. Okay. I'll make this change, make this adjustment, make this tweak. And then Wednesday comes along and you're like, okay, I'm pretty honed in now. And then, so even kind of like through Wednesday as a doctor, you're like, all right, we got that. Okay. That's fixed. Okay. That's doing better. And then you're like, come on, get better. And then by Thursday, you're starting to see the patient like turning around. You're like, okay, we're getting there. And I think that's the beauty of it because you're essentially taking, when you look at the number of sessions, so we do like about 16 sessions, in a week. If you were to take those sessions and spread them out, 3 times a week, you're talking weeks upon weeks. It's not like day 3 are you getting better. It's like month 2 are you starting to get better. So
yes,
I think people have to realize that that's what you're also in any intensive model. That's what you're looking for is you're trying to take 3 to 6 months and you're shortening them down so that you can identify what works and doesn't work within a week instead of within months. If somebody's going to get 60, 70, 80% better, we can do that within a week versus within months.
Yeah.
You're just taking this and shorten it down. And this is not the only model they do it in. I have a kid with special needs and they do that in the special needs community. So there's something here in Denver called Adams Camp. And so you take your kid in and it's an intensive day. You drop your kid off and you pick them up at 5 and they do PT, OT, speech, music, and anything else. And they try to get your kid from point A to point B by Wednesday, Thursday. And then by Friday, they give the parents, here's a bunch of new things for you to do as parents for your kids. It's no different. It's been going on like this for years. You're just finally starting to see professions taking that model and adopting it because it does work so well.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and that's what I get a lot of questions from people like, I don't know if I can handle a week, like they kind of, you kind of psych yourself out with it. Right. And, maybe, is it really better to do an intensive than to just go once a week for like 10 weeks? I'm like, oh my God, do the week intensive. Like, doesn't that make sense? You feel better at like, you go from point A to point 90% or whatever it is in 1 week versus 10, 12, 14 weeks down the road. So that's why the intensive model is so amazing, I think.
The times that sometimes we'll do shortened models, and these are things, this is why we do consultations, but we'll do shortened models. Sometimes we'll do like a 3-day intensive if somebody's like, I can only do 3 days. But those are people that like Kansas, Oklahoma, Wyoming, where they'll like drive down and they'll stay here for like 3 days and then they got to go back to work or take care of a loved one, and then we'll say, okay, let's do another 2 days next week. And so, sometimes you can break it up, but I think those are like people that live in town, people that live in the surrounding states. Yeah. Sometimes you can modify that, but and I've had some people that were really, really, really fatigued that I was like, it'd probably be a good idea to do like maybe 2 days of intensive this week, give yourself a break, but those are, again, these are reasons why we actually do consultations first, because everybody is still a little bit different. And there are certain people who are super fatigued and can only handle so much. So I think is the best way to go and it's my favorite way to go. But but it's not always plausible.
Yeah.
So
And I also, after your week intensive, you're going to feel, 80 times better. But a lot of people will need another, like a mini, like a 2-3 day intensive, like down the road. And I know for me, I had a really big flare up. I think I was like 3 months after my intensive. I had a super big flare up. I way overdid it. And I knew what my trigger was, and I knew as it was happening, I'm like, I just messed my eyes up. And so I had to go in and do another 2 or 3 day. I don't remember what I did, but it didn't take a whole lot to get me back to where I was in that second mini intensive, because we'd already made a lot of gains.
Yeah, this afternoon I have a patient coming in that lives kind of in rural Colorado, and so she's coming in, and we're kind of doing like an intensive just for the afternoon. She's doing so much better and doing so well, but just things kind of got a little bit off, and I haven't seen her since this whole COVID thing. So I'm gonna check on her, when we come back from lunch this afternoon, and then we're gonna do like a little mini intensive, and then maybe see how she does today, and we might do it again tomorrow. So we're gonna kind of do like a 1.5 day intensive and just kind of get her back on track, and then I'll follow back up with her on the phone and make sure things are good and see how she's doing. And yeah, so that's kind of, I think a lot of people, you don't want people to have this misunderstanding that if you come in for a week, you're going to get 100% better,
Right.
Because that's not very fair. But what you try to do, you try to bust your butt to get somebody between like 70 to 90%, because I think that's realistic. And what I've learned over the years is, even I've had some patients go, man, if I can get 50% better, I'll be happy.
Right.
Because you need some function back. You need some hope. And so you're trying to establish hope, a game plan, get some function, get some improvements, so that you're not stuck in thinking, am I ever going to get better than this? And that's the beauty of intensives, not to get somebody 100%. And if you do, then it's hugs and kisses and letters and goodbyes and, those things will happen. And those are like great golf shots that, that happen every once in a while, where you got somebody 100%, and they do happen. I mean, you do see those, but I would say mostly in acute brain injuries, and sometimes your sport athletes, so we'll do that with professional athletes and collegiate athletes, where they'll come back and we can get them pretty close to 100% and they go back to playing, but it's also a different population. So everybody's very, very different.
And at the end of their week intensive, like, it's not just like, goodbye, we're done. You have a pretty thorough follow-up system for your patients as well.
Absolutely. So the last day, is to go over like, how are you doing, to double check findings for sure. We even try to do some, get some more therapies in there, and then also go through a homework session, because we need to give you as the patient things to do at home, because you need to be empowered on here's the things.
And you need to keep doing those at home. That's the key.
Yes, that's what makes our life super easy, is when patients are doing their stuff at home. And then we'll establish follow-ups, and we can do, conference calls, follow-ups, Zoom follow-ups, on the phone follow-ups, but you want to stay in touch with somebody to make sure that things are going the way that you plan. And if not, what do we do? Even if we're working on some of the metabolic pieces like iron, we can check in and say, how's your energy? How's your sleep? How's your mood? How's your anxiety? How's your depression? These are some of the things that we can follow up after the intensive. So we'll have a plan together, on that last day, so that you know what to expect. You're not just kind of getting kicked out of the door and never do again.
Yeah. And, somebody had asked a question on yesterday's post, and I don't have it in front of me, but it's a common question that I get, what are some eye exercises I can do? I have trouble reading. And I always tell people, hey, you need to get checked out, because it's not a cookie cutter program. What eye exercises work for me might make you feel worse, right? Because it's all based on what's going on with our own, like where your injury was and what it's manifesting as. So how would you explain that more eloquently than me?
Yeah, I think it's about that simple, because everybody is incredibly different. So, you can have, especially when you get into like eyes and the vestibular system, if you move your eyes in this direction, that's a different part of the vestibular system than this. So you can't always go, well, if you just do this and turn your head to the right and spin your chair to the right and everything will be dandy. I would, man, if it worked that way, coming to work.
Your job would be easy.
My wife is saying, "Why are you so tired when you get home?" It's because I'm trying to figure people out.
Yeah.
But even like just an eye movement, like midline up this way is completely different part of the brain than this way. So even just a simple eye movement, I had a patient last week that there's some vision therapist gave him a therapy. It was like here, 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 and then diagonals here, 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 here. I was like, wow, that's basically throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Right.
It's a very general exercise, and it does get people well. But I think when you get into brain injuries, it is not that easy. I mean, man, I wish. I wish.
I had gone to another clinic. They were not functional neurologists. And it was probably 2 years after I had gone through my intensive and I was feeling better. And they had me using a Brock string, which a lot of people listening, if you've been to visual therapy, you know what a Brock string is. I was like, I went back 10 steps. It was like, what did you guys just do to me? It was awful. And, they clearly just didn't know what they were doing. They were just, shooting. They were just, they were just like people that were hired to work at this place. Like they weren't PTs or any sort of any sort of doctor. And it was like, they made me 10 times worse and I had to go back and get fixed again.
This is the
don't just take people's exercises at face value. It doesn't work that way.
Essentially, that's why when you look at eyes, you want to look at the eyes in the light and then in the dark, and it's actually that the person I was talking about, the generalized exercise for the eyes, it was interesting because when I put their daughter in the dark, her eyes went in and up. And so it was interesting because they were using Brock strings on her and she was getting migraines. And I'm like, well, yeah, her eyes are converging. And then you're doing Brock strings and you're like, come in, come out, come in, come out, come in. Like that's not appropriate for that person. But because they didn't look at the eyes in the dark, they never saw that. But as soon as you put the goggles on, I mean, the parents were like, what's wrong with their eyes? I'm like, yeah, they're just popping in. It's like, we got to do things to the brain to make, to help them diverge back out, because every time your eyes come in, it can create anxiety and create all these like other issues, so yeah, again, I wish it was simple, because
I know
coming to work would be just a piece of cake. Just here's my protocol and and everybody gets better. But
the saying, if you've seen one brain injury, you've seen one brain injury. No two are the same. No two recoveries are the same. No two treatment plans are the same. So that's why I'm so passionate about functional neurology and what you guys do, because it is so individualized to the patient and what's going on with them. And you make adjustments as you're doing treatment. If you're finding that something's not working, you do something else. So, so if somebody's watching and they're interested in learning more about you guys, they can go online and schedule a complimentary consultation with you guys. And that's at integratedbraincenters.com. And how does that process work?
So we do consultations all of the time. I've always felt that it's important to find out if it was a good fit before you just jump in. Because I don't want people just jumping in and not understanding what we do. So we always do 30-minute free consultation, and which is a good amount of time to kind of like hear your story. So you'll hear me say this if you ever call, but I always say, give me your short story, because so long. So I need
succinct, to the point.
To the point, help me out. Because you want to be able to talk back and forth and kind of explain, here's what we do. Because even during the consultation, one person I might ask for blood work, another person I may not. Another person I might need to do a really, really comprehensive, like a long exam. And some people I might need a little bit shorter. So it kind of gives us an idea of where to get started, because then I got to tell my staff, here, I need to here's the goal and here's where we need to go. And then my staff will kind of put together all the prices. And also too, from a scheduling standpoint, it's always kind of good to know what that person needs, when they'll be in town. And so we do a lot of that work on the front end, so that hopefully when you guys walk in, it's smooth. You come in and everybody knows who you are. You kind of, things have to be smooth, because people have brain injuries and their life is already crazy chaotic and things aren't making sense. So to have an office that's crazy chaotic doesn't help anybody. So we try to knock out some of these things at the very beginning on the consults so that my staff is aware, I'm aware, the person's aware, and hopefully things are, just seamless, but we're all humans, so things can happen, but you try to make it seamless as possible. That's our consultation, and it's totally free. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, great. And if there's a better fit, then I'll tell you there's a better fit. So we're pretty straight up. I just want people to get better. That's all.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that makes you guys unique is that you have Dr. Terry Trinka, who is an eye doctor, and you have Jacob Meyer, who is a psychologist.
Yep. He's a psychologist. And he's actually training in EMDR right now, which I think is
awesome.
Really awesome. So he's really good at what he does. We had another counselor in here that was doing EMDR, and so now he's picking up that slack, but he gets in mindful meditation. He knows EMDR. He's actually done some really great work in some addiction counseling and is before us. So I mean, the guy's super smart. So so we got Terry Trinka, we got Jake Myers, myself, Dr. Maynard. We used to have a nutritionist, but I kind of took over some of that role, so we might get another one here, in the future. So the goal is to have a team approach.
Yeah.
I think that makes it successful.
Yeah. And somebody just asked what the link is again, and it's integratedbraincenters.com. And I can type that in the comments when we hop off here, but I can't do it right now. Our
Facebook too, because on our Facebook page, we're doing webinars every weekend. So, this afternoon, I'm actually doing a webinar on ADD. So I'm gonna talk about ADD and some of the brain aspects with that. I think Trinka's doing his next Tuesday on migraines and vision. And then I think after that is Jacob, and he's been doing stuff on anxiety and depression and some of the stuff.
Every Tuesday, you guys do a webinar series. And so where can someone find that? Can they go to Integrated Brain Centers, or would they find it through your Facebook page?
Probably the Facebook page, because we're linking all the links to Facebook page where you can just, grab a link for free and just hop on. If you guys love listening to just information, and I know with brain injuries, computer lights can be annoying and sound, so you can just listen to us and turn down the light, and then we'll post everything on, online, so you can watch it later on as well. But it's a great place just to pick up information, and we're constantly doing stuff on dysautonomia, and brain injuries, and you'll pick up some stuff too on the functional medicine. So I did a couple on thyroid. I think I did one on IBS, so it's just kind of good information. You guys love to listen and how that interacts. But even if you had a brain injury that caused, IBS, you grab some information on how to make that better. So we're constantly disseminating information, trying to help people.
Yeah, you guys put out a ton of great information pretty much on a weekly basis. And then in September, we are going to be putting together the Concussion Discussions. So we have an amazing team of other doctors. We have some functional neurologists, some functional medicine. We have some MDs. We have a whole array of people that will be taking part in the Concussion Discussions. And you can sign up for that at concussiondiscussions.com. Right now, it's just the link to sign up, but you can get that signed up and you'll get information for that. That's coming up in September in conjunction with National Concussion Awareness Day. So thank you so much for being here today, Shane. This has been great for everyone to get to know you. And tomorrow we'll have Dr. Perry Maynard here. And he'll be sharing what he does at the clinic. So thank you so much for being here. And any final words for our watchers today?
I thank you so much for, having me. And it's great to be a part of the tribe. There's really nothing out there like this. And you see a lot of people trying, but it takes a lot of work. So I think you've done a lot of work on that. So it's great to be a part of it. I think my whole clan is on the tribe now. So I think I just got to get Jake on there as this last person. But, so we're trying to get everybody on there so that we can help answer some questions and be, another kind of help to you guys. So, if you guys have, questions, you can tag us. Just know that we're also crazy busy too, so usually when I get home, I'm trying to do research. So I do a lot of research on patients. So at the end, I'm trying to get patients well. And then sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, I got to go over and check Facebook, and, I'll try to answer some questions and things like that. But so if you guys tag us, don't get too frustrated if it's like a day or two. I know Maynard gets caught up in listening to podcasts. And so I always tease him because I'm like, get your notes done. He's like, oh, I was listening to a podcast last night. So we're definitely here to help you guys. You can tag us. If you don't hear something, then tag us again. But we'll try to help out as much as we can and answer as many questions as we can as well. But yeah, it's just great. So thank you for letting us be a part of it.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. And we'll see you guys tomorrow with Perry Maynard. Did you enjoy this episode of TBI TV? If so, be sure to hit the like button, leave us a comment. Let me know what you would like to hear about in the future. And also be sure to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode of TBI TV.